Welcome to the Wake Before the Day podcast with my parents, Clark and Bobby. We're excited to talk about the Bible and the Holy Spirit adventures. Thanks for listening.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're in Genesis chapter 37, and you're going to see that now most of the focus is going to shift from Jacob to his children. And so Jacob continues to remain prominent throughout these next few chapters. The priority, though, goes to his children. And so specifically in chapter 37, it's his son, Joseph. And when we're introduced to Joseph, we learn that he's 17, that he's the family favorite of the now deceased Rachel. And he's also the older brother to Benjamin. So when it comes to brothers, Joseph is at the end of Leah's children, of their maidservants' children. And so that's what we know right now about Joseph.
Yeah, and on paper, it looks like his life is perfect, it's set, there's lots to celebrate. But what we're going to understand here in the next couple of verses is you could have success, you could have blessings, favors, promotions, but if there is no maturity, it leads to an inflated ego, and it leads to an ungodly, I would say, pride. And what you're going to notice here in Joseph's life is he has some pretty incredible encounters with God and dreams, but there's no mention of God. And so we're going to watch his character change over the next couple of chapters.
One of the more prominent things, too, if you're reading any kind of children's Bible, or maybe if you grew up going to Sunday school, you might remember the story of Joseph and his coat of many colors. So we'll talk about that and how that was actually a really important image. That wasn't just the picture, it was actually the symbol, of favoritism and favor, but how really that didn't play out for Joseph's favor at this time. Because favor, without maturity is not a good thing.
So essentially what he does is he starts telling everybody about these dreams, but what he does is he is not trying to do this to inspire his family, encourage his family, bless his family. The only thing we see that it does is cause dysfunction and division in the family of Jacob. And so there's a big difference here, and it seems like God's going to work in the life of Joseph to refine his character and prepare him for what God's going to need him to do, call him to do at the end of the story. And so, Joseph's all about himself.
You used that in a sermon one time with this famous country singer named Toby Keith, and he sings this song. Clark actually sung it on stage.
Want to talk about me? Want to talk about I? Want to talk about number one? Oh, mommy, my, what I think, what I like, what I know, what I want, what I think. I like talking about you usually, but Joseph's saying today, I want to talk about me. That's what Joseph, if he was a country singer, he'd be Toby Keith.
Because the truth is that so often, and maybe in your life, my life, there might be a glimpse, or maybe there's a promise or something that you've seen that the Lord's given you, or that your family has spoken over you. But then, the promise is here, but this is where we are in real time. And so there's this gap when it comes to, character formation, when it comes to maturation, that's what you talked about, when it comes to wisdom, but also when it comes to just us, and this is what we're really going to take away from these coming chapters too, and us and our dependence on God. There's this gap where we learn, these things. And so we're going to see Joseph.
All right. First verse, Jacob lived in a land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. So this is said in the context of a family that already has great levels of dysfunction because of Jacob's favoritism. The favorite was just sent out with the least favorite. Because you have Rachel, who's the favorite, then you probably have Leah, but then they're the children of his servants, Zilpah and Bilhah, who get sent out with Joseph. Now, Joseph not only goes with them, he gives them a bad report. Now, there's a word here again for us parents out there. Favoritism is very unhelpful, it's very hurtful, it's very ungodly. And so how would you speak to that when it comes to how Jacob missed the mark here?
There's a lot of examples. And so if you remember back to when Jacob was going to meet Esau, so this is going way back. If you remember, he purposely positioned his families in a way that even though he wasn't saying, hey, you're my favorite, that was very obvious.
Because Esau's coming with 400 men thinking he's going to kill him.
Yes.
So he put It's kind of least favorite in the
Yes.
front of the line
Yes.
and the most favorite in the back of the line.
So, I mean, and really, if you want to continue to even go back a little bit further, Jacob's just living out the family dysfunction and legacy from his parents. And so he was the chosen one of Rebekah.
Yep.
And out of that, then, Jacob's the deceiver, but he's also the family favorite. So she kind of sends him away to spare him to Laban.
Yeah.
So there's really legacies and generational, I mean, we've talked about this with family mapping, generational sin that we're seeing play out. But when it comes to just like for us today and our takeaway, how do you talk to your kids? If you're a mom, if you're a dad, if you're an aunt, if you're an uncle, if you're a spiritual mom and dad within the church, how do you intentionally talk to kids and their hearts? It's not by comparing. It's not by saying, well, your sibling did this or that. If we actually want to minister and steward the hearts of small disciples of Jesus, then it needs to be about them and the Lord or them and you. And if something needs to be brought in, because that happens, there's spats, then the focus needs to continually be on the behavior and on the heart posture. There doesn't need to be, this one did this or
unto
you
the
did this
Lord.
better.
Yeah.
Unto the Lord.
Yeah.
And so even, there's good examples of that, like, oh, hey, this, you did this so well, and we really highlight or exalt someone. That's actually something too where we can encourage to come alongside and do, like, we're not pulling that person out. It's actually our family saying, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
So there's different ways it can look, but this is an encouragement. Stop, actually think about that. What does that look like? How has that played out in your family dynamic with you as a child, but then also unto children in your life? What does
Now,
that look
some
like?
people might push back now and say, well, favoritism, Jacob showed favoritism. This has caused a huge mess in the family.
Yeah.
God's gone out of his way to elect and choose these people. So how is this not favoritism? And that's a valid question. There's a massive difference, though, between being chosen and being blessed to be a blessing than being the favorite.
Sure.
Because who Abraham was and Isaac and Jacob and then the extended family, they were called to be a blessing to all people. A blessing to the nations is what God literally told Abram in Genesis 12, verse 3. And that's the mindset that you enter into. You enter in not with I am better than you, but that I have the presence of God and the love of God in my life, and I get to be a conduit of that love for your good and for your blessing. So it's a huge difference between being chosen by God and used by God and being a favorite that is a stinker and views himself as better than everybody else. Now at the end of that verse, you see again that Joseph gives a bad report. So whether he's a narc, a rat, or a tattletale, you see this is not a great way to win over allies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's continue. This is verse 3. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and had made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. And so often when you think about this robe, you think about the colors, because a lot of fabrics and your wardrobe at this time would have been pretty bland, neutral, nothing stand out-ish when it just comes to expense, when it comes to buying dyes for fabric, and also when it comes to practicality. If you're going to be out in the middle of dirt and desert, you're not going to be wearing these vibrant, most likely vibrant, ornate colors. So that's one thing. But then the other thing was also pointed out that this robe potentially was long sleeved.
Yeah.
And so the colors of this robe, and then also the length, adding more fabric to the robe, that signifies an increase in status.
And you have to hold on to both of those, because when the scriptures talks about him having an ornate robe, it doesn't actually clarify which is it. Is it a coat of many colors or is it a long sleeve one?
Sure.
You don't know for sure which one it is. You just know it's a very special robe and it's better and different than everything else and everybody else has. And so again, when you're looking at this, it's a position of status and it's a position of authority. As if the brothers didn't need another reason to hate him. Now they're like, look at him in his long sleeve robe. Thinks he's better than us. Come on now. Back in verse 5, Joseph has a dream, and when he had told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, listen to this dream I just had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose up and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he had told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept this matter in mind.
Yeah. So it's interesting to note, hang on to this, because it's interesting to note right now Joseph is having and interpreting dreams, and later in the story, this will come up again. It's going to come up again in a different context after some time has passed, after Joseph has lived some life here with the cupbearer, with Pharaoh himself, with the chief baker. And so keep this story in mind, because these verses here, what stands out, verses 5 through 11, is that Joseph is already, it seems like, scheming for even more top status and position in his family. So if you've been with us on the podcast, you understand that there's been some actions that have disqualified Levi, they've disqualified Simeon, they've disqualified Reuben.
And those are brothers 1, 2, and 3 of Leah, being the firstborn, the secondborn, the thirdborn.
And so now there's this potential, maybe, Joseph isn't outrightly saying, hey, this is going to be me, in this status ruling over you, but he's saying, oh, I'm having these dreams. It looks like, this is going to be something that's in my future that you guys are going to be bowing down. This is, how it's going to play out. And so we understand, if you've read this, that the sheaves they're pointing to like how the Lord's going to use him to redeem and to save with the idea of food.
And famine.
Famine. And so that is also going to be a key thing to remember. But then when it comes to his family bowing down, that also plays into it.
Yeah.
And so hang on to this, because here, as you're looking at verses 5 through 11, really the main thing that should stick out is you do not hear the word God at all.
Yeah, and I don't think in Joseph's mind he is trying to be a major antagonist here. I think either he's proud, he's immature, he knows he's the favorite. We're not sure of his intentions. What we just do know is that it causes tons of trouble. And like you just said, there's no mention of God, which makes it all about Joseph.
Right.
So he's got a big ego, he's a narcissist, we're not sure. We just know that it causes a lot of problems. So when God gives us favor, successes, or influence, and we don't include him in it, it's going to come at our detriment. It's actually going to be our pride that grows, not humility. It's going to be us getting glory, not God, and that's not how life is meant to be lived. And so just a couple of practical applications here for us to think through. Let's make this real. I wrote some of this down. If my social media post makes people envious of me instead of encouraged by God's goodness, I've missed the point. At a conversational level, if people leave conversation with me thinking, oh, I just wish I had his life, his stuff, his success, and God's not mentioned and God's grace isn't highlighted, I've misused my blessing.
Yeah.
If we're trying to build our own brand instead of God's kingdom, that's not blessing. That's idolatry. That's just finessed and put up in Christian language, essentially. Joseph's problem isn't that he had dreams. It's that God wasn't included in this initial description of the dreams. It's more about himself. And what happens when we mishandle God's blessings, and this can happen to all of us right now, whether it's the success of family or the success at work or graduating with high honors and going to school and scholarships, if we mishandle blessing and it becomes all about us, you steal God's glory and you make it about yourself rather than giving him the glory. Every good thing in our life is from him. And so we need to honor him and acknowledge his goodness and his kindness. What we have is meant to be shared with others, not kept for ourselves. And so God did not give us influence so that people could follow you or follow me. He gives us influence that we can point people to him. He doesn't give us resources so we can build a castle of comfort and stay all by ourselves. He gave us that we could build compassion and connect and bless other people. He didn't give you your story so that you could just be super impressive, or my story so I could be super impressive. It's that you could inspire, impact people, and again, ultimately point them to Jesus. So everything in your life, whether it's your influence and your platform, your possessions, or the people that you oversee or are that you're responsible for or that you influence in your life, point them to God and give God all the glory.
Well, because what we end up seeing here is that this gets stripped away.
Verse 12.
And so often, God will allow these things so we can kind of get back to the basics, so we can actually see and have clarity and focus on him. And so let's pick it up now in verse 12. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flock near Shechem, and Israel said to Joseph, As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I am going to send you to them. Very well, he replied. And so this is not just like a quick walk. That was an interesting point that you kind of saw as you were studying here.
Upwards of 80 miles.
Yeah, like that's a commitment.
That's
He's
a long walk.
sending him out. Israel's sending him out. And so for all Joseph knows, though, when he says, I'm in, he doesn't think he's in danger.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, yeah, let me go check and see what everybody's doing. There's no awareness that something would happen. And so he's kind of waiting. We're waiting to hear, like, how's the report going to go? Because like we read about earlier, the report was not good.
It was a bad report, and it did not help Joseph at all.
Yes, and go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm going to keep going. Verses 14 through 17, the brothers moved on and passed from Shechem to Dothan. We're going to come back to that in just a minute. But in verses 18 and 19, it says specifically, they saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him.
Right.
Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. And so calling him that dreamer just reveals their heart.
Yeah.
The brothers are rightfully hurt by their father's favoritism towards Joseph, but now they're dehumanizing him and calling him essentially names.
Yeah.
And their anger towards Joseph is made even more clear when they hash out their plan for him. What are they going to do? They're not going to call him names.
Premeditated.
They're going to kill him.
Yeah.
This is murder. How much do you have to hate somebody to want to kill them, let alone a family member at that? That's crazy. Clearly, they did not think his dreams were from God. And like we already discussed, the poor leadership of Jacob and having favorites, many people get hurt by this. And so favoritism just breeds envy in the hearts of everyone else. And envy's got ugly consequences.
Yeah.
Merriam-Webster Dictionary, which we've all used in school and is available to everybody, defines envy at the most basic level as this.
Yeah.
Envy is a painful or resentful awareness of an advantage enjoyed by another, joined with a desire to possess that same advantage.
Yeah.
And this is biblical, because when you read the scriptures, even the psalmist in Psalm 72 talks about how he envied the wicked.
Yeah.
Verses 2 and 3, it says, "But as for me, my feet had almost slipped. I had nearly lost my foothold, for I envied the arrogant when I saw the prosperity of the wicked." There are times that we are all convinced and have been convinced that the grass is greener on the other side. That is a lie, and everybody's got their own junk and stuff they're working through. And when you enter back into this story, what's to be gained from being envious of their brother in their hearts?
Yeah.
Because when you look at the story, the brothers are about to rid themselves of their brother, but does this satisfy the deepest desires of their hearts?
Right.
And the deepest desires of their hearts are to be loved. And their father has showed favoritism, and clearly they feel second class. Then going back to what we said a couple podcasts ago, there's a difference between the strongest desires and the deepest desires. And the strongest desires often win out here, leading them to great sin to the point where they're going to try to kill their brother or sell him off into slavery. And so when they get rid of him, does that make them happy? Does that make their father love them more? The answer is no and no. So you pick it up in verse 21.
When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Don't shed any blood. Throw him into the cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. And so Reuben would be held responsible for Joseph's well-being. Just being an elder brother, being the eldest brother.
Yep.
He would be the one that everyone would be looking to, like, hey, what happened to him? What's going on? And so that inherited responsibility. Also, he is inherited from Jacob, which is completely failure.
Yep.
And so not only, one of the things to point out too, is it's not just Jacob's continued showing of favoritism, but it's also his complete lack of awareness with his other son's disfavor.
Yeah, clearly, because
so-
if he had any
Why would he send
awareness
Jacob?
that Joseph
Sorry,
was
Joseph,
threatened and in
Yes.
danger, he wouldn't have sent him.
Yes.
So just, like you said, this guy's clueless.
Let's keep going. "So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt." Break that down
Okay, yeah,
for us.
cisterns were just normally used to hold water, but we're told it's empty, just so that we know, like, this is why he didn't drown in it. Maybe they were going to leave him to starve or die of thirst, but either way, he doesn't stay there for long because the Ishmaelites come by, which are distant family members of them. After there's Abraham, Isaac, and Sarah, and then there's Abraham, Hagar, and Ishmael.
Right.
They part, the Ishmaelites come, and they enter back into the story. Now, Judah has an idea in verse 26. He says, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he's our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the cistern, sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. So now Judah steps onto the scene. He's the fourth born of Leah and Rachel. We know that Reuben disgraced himself by sleeping with his father's concubine.
Right.
Simeon and Levi disgraced themselves by killing all the Shechemites after they harmed Dinah. Could Judah see this as his chance to rise up and be the leader? But the brothers agree to sell Joseph for 20 shekels of silver, which was actually just the price, all the commentaries say, for the average male slave. And by the time you take that money and you divide it up, the brothers aren't exactly making a profit here.
No.
They did this so that they would not have his blood on their hands.
Yeah. So Reuben was not on the scene, and now verse 29 says, "When Reuben returned to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, 'The boy isn't there. Where can I turn now?'" And so this is one of those things, there's division now amongst the division.
Yeah.
Because they had this plan, but evidently Reuben wasn't a part of it. So Reuben comes back on the scene, understanding that Joseph's going to be there. That's what the plan was for him to come back, and he's gone.
Yeah.
And so the tearing, there's something within this culture with grief where there's like such a visible sign when you're tearing clothes. And he's saying, oh, what is going to happen now?
Yeah, verse 31, they got Joseph's robe, they slaughtered a goat, they dipped the robe in the blood. They took the ornate robe back to their father and said, "We found this, examine it to see whether it's your son's robe." He recognized it and said, "It is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." And so they trashed the robe. Essentially, they want to give as little detail as possible and let Jacob come to his own conclusions. Verse 34, then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth, and mourned for his son for many days. All of his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "No," he said, "I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave." So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard.
So again, another fact here that we're reading that's interesting to know. If you've read the Bible, anywhere else, you're going to see the name of God. You're going to read Jesus' name.
Yeah.
Maybe Holy Spirit is on the scene. And there is no mention of God anywhere in this text. No mention of God in the cistern or when Joseph's being sold. This is an interesting place to put yourself in the story, because I think we can all relate on some level to some type of hurt or betrayal or abandonment.
Yeah.
But when it's at this level, when you're people who were everything at this time, I think sometimes now, we think of the idea of family and it's like, it's a good thing and, it's something that we can belong to and feel loved in. But at this time, like, family is everything.
And you stay together.
You are together, and you, like, so much so that, like, you introduce yourself by your family name.
Yep.
And so for this level of complete betrayal and abandonment, for Joseph to be in there, and there's no mention of God, is an interesting correlation to sit in that and think, okay, like, if I'm Joseph right now, if I am understanding, I've had these dreams, I've had these, and then where I am in complete disarray.
Yeah. But
what is going on?
When I look at this, though, you have a sense that, a clear sense, because we get to see the whole story, that God is moving, and he's moving Joseph towards not only the pit, not only Potiphar's house, not only jail, but ultimately to Pharaoh, because God has redemptive purposes for him. Going back to verses 14 and 17, there's this just kind of throwaway line, it seems like, where he shows up, he's looking for his brothers, he can't find them because they moved on. It says an unnamed man told him they moved from Shechem to Dothan.
Right.
Usually, when it's an unnamed person in the Bible, it's usually an angel. It doesn't say it's an angel here. But we do know is that God made sure that Joseph was able to find his brothers. And this guy was there, happened to be there, and happened to point him in the correct direction. Now, when it comes to our life, like you said, we've all felt betrayed. We've all felt alone. Sometimes our pain is self-inflicted. We make bad decisions, we sin, therefore the cost of rebelling against God is some of the things that we see in our life. There are other times, though, you're just living in a fallen world. It's a broken world, it's sinful, and creation itself is broken. And so whether it's getting laid off from work, or there's a natural disaster, or the loss of a loved one, or it's an accident, that can be because we're living in a fallen world. Like Joseph's, we can be victims of intentional harm and attack via other people. There's spiritual warfare. Evil one can come after us. The reason why I bring up really these 4 categories is that regardless of what we're experiencing, whether it's self-inflicted pain, pain by others, it's just product of a natural world, or it's spiritual warfare, God can use and wants to use all of it for our good and for His glory. And so I hang my hat on that and saying, thank you, Lord. And ultimately, again, we've mentioned this scripture again, but you see this in the life of Jesus most clearly, where people had a plan and they schemed at a human level, but it was all to fulfill God's ultimate and redemptive purposes. So the brothers here felt like they're making the decisions and they were responsible for it. But actually God was working through it to get Joseph to where he needed him.
Right.
Just as the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the high priest killed Jesus, Acts 2:23 says, "This man, Jesus, was handed over to you by God's deliberate plan and foreknowledge. And you, with the help of wicked men, put him to death by nailing him on the cross." So we should end our time together today being encouraged, whether it's this story or you're thinking of a story like in Esther where God's not mentioned. He's there, He's working, and He's working for our good. So turn to Him, regardless of what circumstances you find yourself in, and trust that He's at work. So thank you for joining us today. God bless you, and we'll be back tomorrow with the next chapter of Genesis. See you then.
The Lord bless you and keep you. Don't make His face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn His face towards you and give Him His peace. Have a great day.